you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick Podcast.
I'm far from average. That's why I had to come sit down and chop it up with DJ Maverick. They know my name from coast to coast and even in Dallas. I use my talent when I'm faced with a challenge. Gratitude strength is my magnet. Close your eyes and imagine. If you can see it in your mind, then you can have it.
Maverick Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today, we have another super episode for you guys. We have a super talented video and podcast creator, also co-host of Primary Tech, the one and only Steven Robles. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we dive into everything, for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Steven Robles. I've been podcasting for over 14 years. Was in various industries before that, music, travel, did photography and marketing. But now I really focus on making video and podcast content for Riverside, which is a platform to record remote content, talking head content. Then I have my own YouTube channel, youtube.com/@beardfm. Hopefully going to hit 100K subscribers this month with the iPhone 16. And
Absolutely.
So that's, doing a lot of content there, and then hosting Primary Technology, a weekly tech show as well.
A perfect starting point is something I read about you. You used to think that being a jack of all trades was kind of a bad thing until you read a specific book, right? So tell me about that book and how it changed your perspective.
Yeah, the book is called Range by David Epstein. And that saying, jack of all trades is a master of none. Oftentimes people forget the second part or don't know or haven't heard the second part of that quote, which is, but better than a master of one. And so being a jack of all trades, I have many interests. It was, like I said, photography and video. Earlier in my career, I'm a music major. I played trumpet. So my degree is in trumpet performance, which, I don't use it all in my work now. But having those varying interests, I always thought maybe I'm at a disadvantage because I didn't hyper focus on something when I was 18 and just did only that for the next 30 years. But after reading that book, you realize that people who are hyper focused on a single thing, they use golf as an example. Oftentimes, or even chess masters, they might be extremely good at that one thing, very talented and skilled. But if you put them in a different environment or give them a different challenge, they're usually at a disadvantage to be able to troubleshoot and problem solve quickly because they don't have that breadth of experience and knowledge. And so I began to understand that all these different interests and things I enjoy can actually bring it all together. And now doing a video podcast every week, I actually do use a lot of those skills. I'm using video and photography skills because it's a video podcast. I'm designing thumbnails and episode artwork, which is graphic design. I did a little bit of that. Plus music is a part of that and the audio production. And so I've tried to tell people, if you have many interests, you might focus on one at a certain season and change foci, but they can actually work to your advantage and it'll make you a well-rounded individual and creator.
That's a great tip. I suffer from the same thing. So during the day, I work in tech and then I also like to DJ. And then I've got the podcast as well. So I've got multi-interests, but I always hear, right, like focus on one thing. But the thing that kills me is like people are super talented, right? And you go to LinkedIn and they only share like a tiny little bit of what makes them, right? So I wish people were more like open about, hey, yes, I work in tech, but I also like photography. They could be a killer photographer. People would never know, right?
For sure. And, I've performed classical pieces on trumpet and I've sang opera. It doesn't have a lot to do, but those are also all learning environments. When I was playing trumpet in an orchestra, I was quote unquote leading a section. I was the principal chair. And so those are leadership qualities that'll carry over into other workplaces. And I eventually led creative teams of video and graphic designers, which then taught me project management and organization. And so every experience you have is going to be teaching you something if you're open to it and if you're paying attention to use those skills in the future.
Yeah. So as a kid, was the dream was to be in a band or go tour, something like that? Music focus? What was the dream?
As a kid, I think I wanted to be a scientist or an astronaut like most kids. But music was always a big part of even my childhood. In high school, I did musicals. I sang in Into the Woods and Les Mis. And I thought I would be a music teacher. That was really the course that I was heading after high school. And while I didn't become a music teacher, a lot of my content, especially on my YouTube channel, is very tutorial focused. I'm teaching people about the updates to their devices. I'm teaching them how to automate. I'm teaching about smart home devices. And so it's interesting that that teaching line has gone from even childhood through various careers and is coming out now.
Yeah, I really enjoy your channel. One of the things that you're big on is shortcuts. And I have to confess, I'm not big into shortcuts just yet, but I'm catching up on all your tips. It's really cool to see. And that's a great sort of segue to the new iPhone, right? What are your thoughts on the new iPhone?
Apple has such mature products now, especially when you look at the iPhone and the AirPods. And so on the surface, there's not maybe a ton different. There's a new camera control button. So photographers and videographers, I think there'll be some advantages there. Apple Intelligence is kind of the big feature. And unfortunately, that's not launching until next month as we record, so in October. And so it's a weird time because, years ago when Apple would launch a new iPhone, it would have all the new features. And so you're buying the hardware, but you're also kind of getting all the features in one. And so it seems like a bigger upgrade. This is an interesting time where Apple's releasing new hardware, but you have to wait a month for Apple Intelligence. And even then, it's not going to have all the features that Apple has advertised Apple Intelligence. So we're in a weird time right now, but I'm excited that people who buy new iPhones, even the base model, will get Apple Intelligence and some of the features. I have the beta on my phone and I've been running it. And even things just like summarizing notifications and being able to summarize articles built into Safari are some advantages that I think people will enjoy.
Awesome. I also saw you were sort of daily driving the Pixel 9 Pro, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I did it for a week. And, a lot of comments on that video, like, why is an iPhone guy reviewing a Pixel? And it's like, well, I like to know what's going on. I want to be able to speak to what are the advantages, disadvantages. Google's great at hardware. Unfortunately, no one buys Google hardware. They always buy Samsung Galaxy phones, which those are good phones too. But I really love the Pixel hardware. It is very clear, though, that when you choose an ecosystem today, that you're kind of locked in. And so being in the Apple ecosystem, that includes screen time and parental controls, that includes smart home, it includes shortcuts, little things like AirDrop. And once you're in an ecosystem like that, it makes it very difficult to switch, which, you understand why the platforms do it, but it is kind of unfortunate because I would love to see, like, what is it really like to use an Android full time, even for a week? And even the week I tried to experiment, I was picking up my phone a lot just to approve parental requests.
That's funny. I'm the same way. Everybody accused me of being an Apple fanboy so much that one time I switched over. I went Samsung, and I missed some of those same things that you're talking about, the ecosystem, especially if you're doing content and you're editing, you have to AirDrop from your Mac, all those little things. You miss them so much. You just take advantage of it. You don't even think twice. And then all of a sudden, if you don't have that, it becomes like a huge barrier. How do I transfer stuff?
Right.
Text messages, everything, right?
Yeah, it's transferring files. I guess there are Android apps that kind of hack into AirDrop, but even things like Universal Clipboard, there's often things where I will copy on my iPhone and then paste on my Mac or vice versa. And those little quality of life features, they make a big deal when you put it all together.
Yeah. So what came first, your YouTube channel that's tech focused or the podcast?
I've been podcasting for way longer. I actually got to start the Apple Insider podcast in 2015. And before that, I kind of did my own personal podcasts, like back when you had to write your own XML feed and text edit and all that.
Oh, wow.
It was way back when. And so I did the Apple Insider podcast for a while, and that was an audio-only show. And they have, a great website. I love the guys over there. We started HomeKit Insider as a video podcast back in 2016, where we talked all about smart home. That was great. But really wanted to have kind of my own show and break out. And so that's what we started this past January in Primary Tech. And I really enjoy getting to do both. And I've been at Podcast Movement now for about 4 or 5 different conferences, and I've had to been able to speak at all those conferences, both solo and on a panel. And so I love the podcasting medium, and so it's just a passion of mine.
Yeah, for the viewers maybe that aren't familiar with the Podcast Movement, maybe tell us a little bit, what is that specifically?
Yeah, it's probably the biggest podcast conference, at least here in the U.S., probably maybe globally too. Happens twice a year, usually in August and then again in March. This past time it was in Washington, D.C. Several thousand podcasters from all over will come. And there's lots of brands too, like podcast hosts and microphone companies. Shure will be there with a booth, and then Spotify and Amazon, because big names have got into podcasting too. But it's a great place to go to different breakout sessions, learn about the current trends. Lots of data is shared, like what are video podcast doing versus audio, and what's the best way to grow your audience and monetize. And so it's a great place if you're a podcaster and you really want to get into it. It'll be in Chicago this March, and then after that, I believe it's going to San Diego. So it'll be on the West Coast after that.
That's cool. So if you started your podcast with XML compared to nowadays, I mean, you've seen pretty much like the whole range, right? Tell me maybe some of the tools that you're leveraging now, because myself, I'm leveraging AI for captions, for video editing. I mean, all kinds of stuff. I'm sure you are too. So maybe tell me, what are some of your favorite tools, and maybe what are the advantages of leveraging some of those tools?
For sure. I mean, the tools have come such a long way. I mean, when I started the Apple Insider podcast, we were using Skype for the call, and then Ecamm used to make a call recorder. That was like a utility that would record it, but you know, it was hacky. And then so anyway, it was old school then, but now the tools are amazing. I mean, first I use Riverside to record all my content, both my podcast and if I ever do interviews. And Riverside makes it easy to get that high quality recording, super easy, especially with remote guests. And so that's kind of the key part of a lot of my process. And they have a lot of AI tools built in, like Magic Clips, which will automatically create those vertical videos and AI show notes. So Riverside is a huge deal. And then Transistor for my podcast host. I love everything they do, and they have special features like Apple Delegated Delivery, which not a lot of people are familiar with. But if you want to offer paid for content in Apple Podcasts, the app, you have to like go through this whole rigmarole of uploading audio directly to the Apple dashboard, and it's really cumbersome. Well, Transistor has a feature where you can use their dashboard and where you normally manage your podcast, click a button and say, this is exclusive bonus content for paying members, and it'll send it to Apple and take care of that for you. So Transistor has some great tools for that. And one other tool I'll mention for my personal YouTube channel, Gling.ai is an incredible tool, especially for YouTubers, where after you record, if you're like me, I don't use a script when I record YouTube videos.
Yeah, same.
I just talk extemporaneously. And so a lot of times you start and stop, or you say the same thing multiple times. Well, you bring that into Gling, and it will transcribe it, but it'll automatically remove all silences and remove bad takes. So if you started and stopped 3 or 4 times, it'll cut out the first times and then just keep the last one. And then in the transcript, you can go in and granularly change that. But then I bring that into Final Cut, and my project is basically edited for me. And then I just add whatever B-roll and overlays that I want. And it really expedites the whole editing process for me.
I'm a huge fan of video. I personally use Spotify for podcasters just because they let you upload the video version as well. Even if people don't want to see it, at least they have an option. What is your thoughts on that? Like video versus audio? Do you think people should do both just in case? What do you think?
Yeah, I had a recent post about that on Threads and X, and a lot of people get worked up about it.
Yeah.
When you say that you need video to grow, a lot of audio-only podcasters come out of the woodwork, and they get very angry. And listen, I was audio-only for a long time, and it's my still preferred method of listening. I listen to my podcasts more than I watch them, like 99%. Okay. I'm listening because I do think there's something special about that audio-only medium. But in 2024, now heading into 2025, it's a very different world, the podcasting landscape. And there's been a lot of data from Cumulus Research and Edison Research saying, especially younger generations, people under 30 years old, they are a video first generation, including podcasts. And more people are discovering podcasts via video, whether that's clips on Instagram and TikTok or directly on YouTube. And so you can still do an audio-only show in 2025, and maybe you can grow it if it's excellent, you publish consistently, and you market it as really well. But growth will be easier and much faster when you add video. And you're going to be accessing an audience that you might have otherwise completely missed. And for Primary Technology, I have a lot of people that will reach out and say, I discovered the show on YouTube, and that's just how I watch. That's how I consume the show. And so that would be a whole segment of the audience. The number is about a half. Almost half of the audience of Primary Tech is just on the video. And so you might be giving up half of your audience if you don't have video. And so that's why I highly recommend it. And again, it's easier than ever. You can use your phone as a camera now, continuity camera on the Mac. Riverside has a mobile cam feature, and it just makes it super easy. And so highly recommend doing video as well.
Yeah, it's almost like a future proof, right? Because you never know where we're headed, right? I think one of the things that I've seen with my personal podcast is putting clips even on TikTok, Reels, and then sending that to the long form version of the podcast.
Right.
That's really helped me grow. You know, I don't know if you're doing some of that, but for me, clips have been huge.
Absolutely. And, you know, you can make audiograms from audio-only content. You can have the captions and little waveforms, but it is just not as visually engaging as seeing people's faces on their screen. And so when they're scrolling TikTok or Instagram Reels, if they see two people's faces, like our faces, in a vertical clip with the animated captions, that's going to grab their attention more than just a static image and words on top of it. So those clips are huge. YouTube literally gives you a direct link where when you upload a short, you can connect that short directly to a long form video, where with one tap, someone can be over watching the full episode as the long form content, and you can get subscribers, that way as well. So, and future proofing, honestly, the future is here when it comes to that transition. The latest data from Cumulus is that YouTube is now the number one platform people consume podcasts, above Apple Podcasts, which was the leader for almost 2 decades, and Spotify. And so that is actually right now, it's not an emerging trend. It is the trend.
We're here,
so,
right?
Yeah, YouTube is here to stay.
Yeah. So you have a co-host on Primary Tech. I don't, right? So I always have to have a guest. But one thing that I'm always curious about is maybe trying a solo episode, because there's so many topics that I enjoy talking about. I'm big into crypto, big into tech, big into finance. And it's hard sometimes to find guests that want to talk about all that nerdy stuff, right? What do you think about doing a solo pod? Have you ever tried that?
Listen, solo podcasts, they can definitely work. I've done a few solo episodes, especially for HomeKit Insider back in the day. And it's totally possible. I would recommend, if you're going to talk about crypto or whatever other topics, find clips that you can pull from YouTube or social media, audio clips, video clips, news clips, whatever. So you can kind of break up your own presentation. But Jay Klaus, who, if you're into video, you're into podcasting, YouTube, highly, highly recommend looking at Jay Klaus's content. He does a lot of solo episodes. Some of them will be Q&As from his listeners. He'll just do a Q&A episode. Or he might just talk about kind of his business and what he's been discovering. So you can definitely do a solo podcast. It can be engaging. It takes a little more intentionality, planning, and make sure you have kind of a good flow of the episode, no rambling, and inserting some clips here and there will keep people engaged for sure.
Yeah, I'm so tempted because I can't, count the number of times where I've had a guest and they cancel, right? And being a new podcaster, it's like the guest cancels. There's no pod for me, right? And that's like, you want to stay on that rhythm where people know, okay, every Monday there's a new episode or whatever. They come and check. And if you miss it, I think that's like, you're losing audience, right?
And if the choice is go solo or miss an episode, 100% do a solo episode. When it comes to podcasting and YouTube, consistency is a huge deal. And so if you're saying there's a new episode every Monday, there needs to be a new episode every Monday, even if it's a 10 to 15 minute episode of just you talking. And honestly, if a guest cancels, that's the topic. What do you do when a guest cancels on your interview podcast? And that can be a 10 to 15 minute episode where you talk about it. Well, I had to prepare. I'm going to talk about this topic. This was the process I used to get ready. And let's talk about that real quick. And, a 10 to 15 minute episode, that's great too. Put that out there.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those struggles behind the scenes, right? A lot of people think podcasting is easy. You just turn on the camera, you just talk, and it's done, right? But the number of hours that go into editing, into marketing, doing the clips, social media, everything, right? Maybe give us some insights about the behind the scenes, just the amount of work that you have to go through.
A lot of podcasters are solo creators, and that's me too. I don't have the whole team editing my content.
Same.
And so for Primary Tech, we'll record for an hour and a half, typically in the morning, like 8:30 to 10 a.m. And by 12 noon, 2 hours after that, I have everything published and ready to go. For me, I found I can't wait. If I record one day and edit the next day, it just doesn't work for me because I lose steam very quickly, to go back and edit a whole thing. But thankfully, tools like Riverside, tools like Gling makes the editing process much faster. And this is really the key part. If you can record with the intention of doing the least amount of editing possible, then it'll expedite everything. And so me and my co-host, Jason Ayton, we both speak very well extemporaneously. We have notes, we have a shared note, and we'll look through the topics, and we both have knowledge of what we're going to talk about. But we're both we don't make a lot of mistakes. We don't use filler words. There's not huge gaps in the recording. So honestly, it doesn't take a lot of editing. And then when we're recording, what I'll do in Riverside is I actually have a tab group in Safari where I have web pages of everything we're going to talk about. So every news article, the iPhone 16, whatever. And as we're talking about these things while we're recording, even while I'm talking, I'll share my screen about the topic. I'll scroll a little bit, select something, take that down, share another web site. And that actually is kind of editing as you record, because now I'm adding visual elements live and I don't have to do it after the fact. So when I jump into Riverside, it's really setting an in point and out point. And if there was any kind of glaring mistake, which not usually there are, I'll set a marker too. If there's something, which you can do, just press the letter M and you'll see that marker in the editor. So that video version is usually like 10, 15 minutes and I'm done. It's really not a lot of editing. And so focusing on recording for the least amount of editing is a big deal.
Yeah, one of the things I saw with you and your co-host, you also have great chemistry, right? He was giving you a hard time about the new camera button, right? And you're like, no, this is the way that I like to hold it. He's like, what are you doing? Just flip it over, right? So I think having that chemistry is crucial, right? So what are your thoughts as far as finding a co-host? How did you find him? How did you decide, okay, I'm going to go co-host versus solo?
Finding a good co-host is another critical element that happens before you ever hit record. And I actually met Jason on Twitter probably 5 or 6 years ago. Because
just randomly.
Well, he posted an article. He's a technology writer at Inc.com, and he posted an article about Facebook and privacy or something like that. And I took issue with the premise. And so, I replied to him kind of jabbing a little bit, not mean, of course. And so that caused an interaction. And at that time I was hosting the Apple Insider podcast, and I was like, hey, let's talk about this. Can I interview you? Can you come on the show? And so he came on Apple Insider and we did an hour show interview like we're doing now. And I was like, wow, he's really easy to talk to. We have a natural chemistry. We're both super nerds into all this stuff. We can just talk about it for hours. And so, that was 5-6 years before we started Primary Technology. But then we stayed in contact and we would tweet at each other, text each other. And then when I wanted to start a show, it was just a natural guess. Well, this is the guy. We have good chemistry. We have this similar interests, great knowledge, and he brings something different to the table too, which a lot of our listeners have noticed. He is really knowledgeable on earnings and companies that are not Apple and what's going on in the industry on the business side. And so that's another great complementary tool where he can bring that knowledge where I'm a little lacking in that, and where I can bring maybe some more consumer facing or, teaching type points. So having that chemistry is crucial.
It sounds like you have the dream job, right? You're working at Riverside, you're also doing content creation. So everything you're doing sort of meshes really well, right? How did you get to Riverside? I hear there's an interesting story there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've wanted to be in the podcasting industry in the world as my career for a long time. And for a long time, that wasn't the case. I was doing other things, video production, leading creative teams in kind of more corporate settings. And so knowing I wanted to make that move, also wanted to work remote. After the pandemic, I was like, well, this is great. I would love to just work from home.
Not going back. Right,
right, exactly. And so I began to, look at what jobs were out there, and also posting more on my personal YouTube channel, which is very small at the time, 100, 200 subscribers. But I was just going to post content on there because I thought, if I'm applying for jobs in video and podcast content, then let me have some stuff out there that potential employers could see. And so I began doing a little more posting on my personal channel, applied for hundreds of jobs on Glassdoor, Indeed, anything that had podcast or video in the title. And I found Riverside, which I already used them, honestly, to record the podcast I was doing, but I saw they had an opening and applied. And, frankly, they took a chance on me because it was a new kind of full-time industry for me. And I took a chance on them because fully remote position, it was totally out of my industry. And it just worked out amazingly well. And so I've been there 2.5 years now. Absolutely love the company, the team, and of course, wholly believe in everything that they are doing and the tools they're making to help others share their story easily. And so it's been a dream.
Yeah, you're crushing it. I really enjoy your videos where you do behind the scenes and do your setup and all that, because I think that's another critical point, right? Having your own space that's already set up and you just turn it on and then you're ready to go. I think that's a huge barrier too. When you have to set up a camera, have to set up lighting, all this stuff, then I think it's like, okay, I don't want to create, it's too much work, right?
Is having a place where you can record quickly and easily is critical. And obviously not everyone has that ability. But even if you could just set up a desk in a bedroom or something and face it in a way where it's nondescript, I've seen a lot of people, even younger guys, like teenagers in their 20s, they have a small bedroom. And so they just put a desk and point the camera at themselves and they're right up against the wall.
It's all about the camera angle. I mean, you can make it look really fancy and you could be in a closet, honestly.
Exactly. And this room I'm in right now, it's 8 foot by 9 foot. Like this is a pretty small room. And my camera's way up against the back wall. Like it is basically touching one wall and you're seeing all the way back that way. And, the room is not even big enough where I could have worked it out where it was like straight on. That was kind of my ideal. Like I wanted a straight on shot, but I couldn't do it. Like I had to be, but you know what? No one cares. Like obviously no one cares. I've been doing this for 2 years. And so trying to work it out to make it as easy as possible to record. And honestly, like, again, if all you have is your phone, just get a tripod, get a little light, $30, $40, set it up, and have that just ready to go. And so you can quickly record. Just find that system so you can get in that rhythm, and that's not a barrier, because setting up a camera, taking everything down, it's a big barrier to making content.
I don't know how much you focus on analytics, but I really geek out with my YouTube channel. What's going on? What are people clicking on? And I like to experiment with the shorts, with the long form. One of the things that I want to do is like expand my content. I also speak Spanish. So I wonder, do I just start doing that? Are people going to freak out? Like, hey, what's going on? Am I in the wrong channel? I don't know. Like, I'm afraid to try new things on the same channel versus a dedicated channel. Have you tried any of that? Have you noticed any changes with the algorithm?
I've been experimenting a little more with shorts just to see, and they have not gotten the same traction as my long form videos, which frankly I'm fine with. Like if I had to choose long form or short form, I'll take long form all day.
Yeah, for sure.
But, for Spanish, YouTube, hopefully they've talked about it over the past year that they're going to launch a feature where you can upload an audio file in a different language for dubbing, and then viewers can actually choose the language they want to hear, not just the captions to read. And so if and when that feature comes out and you can take advantage of that, of course, record yourself speaking in Spanish for the same video and upload that audio file. And now you have one channel with multiple languages. That's what Mr. Beast had said that he was going to do with that feature. And I think he already did it.
But that guy has like a dedicated team that does like sort of like the overdub voiceovers in all kinds of languages, right? Yeah.
He pays professional overdubs, and he had separate channels for each language. So he had Mr. Beast in Spanish, Mr. Beast in Japanese, but he was going to start consolidating them with that specific feature. But I would experiment. You could, who knows when that feature comes out? I would say for you personally, try another channel and do the exact same videos all in Spanish. And you could just say, here's the channel in Espanol, and do all Spanish. And honestly, that is a huge market. If you can appeal to another language, that's an advantage that you could have over many others in the same space. So yeah, I would try it.
I think a lot of people are afraid of AI, and they're like, it's going to be dangerous, right? Of course, there's good and bad with AI, but what I always tell people, it's going to make you better, right? It's going to 10x you. So if you have AI, don't be afraid of it. Start playing around with it, and then it's going to be more tools, like another tool in your pocket, right? What are your thoughts on AI? And sort of, even if you don't have like a real purpose for it just yet, start playing with it, get comfortable with it, and see what you can do with it, right?
I think everyone would probably have a use case today. They just need to figure out how it works in their processes. But like ChatGPT for summarizing things, anybody and everybody could use that, whether it's a long email you want to summarize, a long article you want to summarize, meeting notes. If you record an entire meeting, you can now transcribe that, get the key points in a summary with ChatGPT. Like, you just need to try and do it, figure out how to do it, because you will be at a disadvantage. Even now, like I use ChatGPT with every video. Once I'm done recording, I transcribe it. I put that transcription in a ChatGPT with a prompt, and I basically ask it for titles, descriptions, and tags for YouTube. And I'll massage the title especially and the description, But having a starting place helps me expedite the entire thing. I'm not starting from scratch. I don't have a blank slate. And that allows me to make lots of content. I make multiple videos a week for multiple channels, and using something like ChatGPT just for something as simple as that just puts me at an advantage over someone who is not doing that. So I would highly recommend, figure out how you can do it. That's some of the shortcuts I did too in a recent video where I said, here's 10 ChatGPT shortcuts where you can summarize a website just right from your Safari on your iPhone. Hit the share button, hit the shortcut. You get a summary of the article through ChatGPT. Apple Intelligence is going to do that too once that comes out, but you can start using it now. And so I would highly recommend.
How'd you land on Beard FM? I thought that was really cool when I saw that.
It's funny. I was at a job where doing more personal content on YouTube might have been a conflict. And so I had to kind of not anonymously do it, but I didn't want to use my name at first. And I really wasn't sure what to do. A lot of digital or techie names just sound kind of bland, whatever. And so it's like, well, I'm a teacher at heart. I'm teaching about these things. That's what I'm doing even now. And well, what can separate that? Like tech teacher, like none of that really was anything. And so beard, I don't know. Like it just, I have a beard. It can be a separating thing. And honestly, domain names, can be a big deal. And so I just kind of like, what's the shortest domain name I can get that will be tangentially related to my brand? And I got beard.fm. And I was like, well, that's pretty short. And whenever
you can't shave now, though. You have to keep the beard forever now, right?
I don't ever plan on it. So I think we're good. But, beard.fm, when I tell people that URL too, it's kind of a funny moment. They chuckle. Yeah. Which immediately means they'll probably remember it because it's something they haven't heard before. So
it's funny that you mentioned sort of keeping sort of your day job separate from your content creation. I'm kind of the same way. And the thing that happened to me is I had a guest and she tagged me on LinkedIn. And once she did that, like the secret was out. The next day at work, everybody was asking me like, whoa, you have a podcast? Like we didn't know you had a podcast. And then the secret was out. Like it's kind of weird. Like you said, a lot of jobs, they may not be open to that, but I just don't know how you can avoid that.
It's definitely harder today. And what I have found is people, as in, listeners, viewers, they really connect more with a personality than they do a faceless brand, unless you're Nike or Apple. And so having the brand really be your name helps a lot because now they can just search your name. It's your social media handle. It's whatever. And so, once I move jobs, and thankfully Riverside is extremely gracious and it's mutually beneficial. As I grow a personal channel, I'm also on Riverside. It's cross-pollination. And so if you can just be you out there creating under your name, it is helpful if you're able to do that.
Building that personal brand is critical nowadays, right? I think I read an article where it's predicted in the future, everybody's basically going to be in the gig economy. That's going to be like one of the top jobs where people are just either content creators, influencers, whatever. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, there's a lot of jobs out there. There's a lot of jobs that need to be done. I think that content creation skills will probably be a part of more jobs. Any marketing department at any company, even today, like you need content creation skills. You look at the brands doing it the best, whether it's Wendy's on Twitter or Duolingo on TikTok. The people who have great content creation skills, understand trends, can appeal to a younger audience, they are succeeding. And so marketing, 100%. But I was at Starbucks the other day and I overheard this lady talking about mentioning AI and the team or whatever. Did not appear to be a person that I would have thought is talking about AI. And so I rarely ever talk to anyone in public, especially strangers.
Oprah's doing a thing about AI, right? Like if Oprah's doing a presentation, it's mainstream, right?
For sure. But I was, so I actually asked this woman, I heard you talking about AI. Do you mind sharing like what context you were discussing? And she actually works for a healthcare insurance company, and they are experimenting with AI and allowing doctors to use it in diagnosis assistance and medication, prediction or whatever. And it's like these tools, AI, content creation, I don't think all the jobs will be that, but the skills in those jobs, content creation, AI will be a part of more jobs, if not all jobs in the future. And so brushing up on those skills, learning about it now will put you in an advantage for the future.
Outside of your podcast, would you say that you're going to be focused on sort of tech reviews or just tech related stuff in general? What do you think you want to focus on?
You know, if you want to grow the fastest on like YouTube, the best thing you can do is have a channel that is just very specific on a thing and just do it over and over. You know, you look at my kids play Fortnite, and so my middle son, he watches Fortnite videos, and I see these Fortnite creators. I mean, million views. They got 14 million subscribers.
It's crazy.
The thumbnails are almost exactly the same every time. It's almost the same face, and then a picture of a Fortnite character. And every video is just Fortnite, various things. And it's like, if you want to just grow fast, hyper focus, and make sure that everyone who watched your last video will want to watch your next video. That's kind of the process. For me, I want to have a more diversified channel. I want to be able to talk about my HomeKit smart blinds, and I want to be able to talk about shortcuts. I want to be able to review a MagSafe battery pack, and I want to be able to review an iPad. And so that diversification might slow down growth a little bit, but I want the freedom to be able to talk about whatever technology I want to talk about and still have somebody watch it. And, you know, I do see some channels even right now that might hyper focus on like the latest iOS update and the features in that update. And they have great channels, hugely successful, millions of subscribers, hundreds of thousands of views. And they get, you know, they'll post a video and it'll get 100,000 views in 24 hours. And it's like, man, I could, you know, I do videos on the iOS update. What's up? But you'll notice that if they do a different video, whether it's like a review style video or a behind the scenes type video, nowhere near the views as the niche that they have made for themselves. And so again, that's part YouTube. YouTube rewards that consistency and hyper focusing, but it helps me understand, like, I want to be able to have decent views on whatever I do and also not feel pigeonholed to have to be so specific about the entire process. I want someone to go to my channel and be like, oh, he has a video on iOS 18. Oh, he's got a video on smart home. I'll find something I enjoy. And that's the path I've chosen.
Got it. What about the barrier to entry to doing tech reviews? You either have to go buy the stuff or get, you know, people to start sending you stuff. When you're first starting out, it's probably difficult to get these companies to send you the gear, right? How do you get started?
You know, I don't know the ethical ramifications of what I'm about to say, but what I have had to do, you buy and return. Yeah. You just buy and return. And that's what I've done, especially for big things like the Pixel 9 Pro. I bought and returned that. That was last week. You know, no company sends me any phones or tablets. I don't get sent anything on that scale. I get sent chargers now, which is nice, and other things, smart home gadgets, which is really cool. But yeah, you might just have to either buy and return, buy and resell, you know, find deals.
You have to hustle.
You know, and you got to do the hustle and buying things used. Do that. You know, Facebook Marketplace, eBay. You know, whatever you have to do to get started. And so that's how I did it.
Yeah, I always go back to the story of Marcus Brownley getting started with just that little remote for his laptop, right? And look where that guy is now. It's incredible.
For sure. And, you know, nothing is too small or too insignificant. You know, someone will care about it. And that's kind of the amazing thing about YouTube and podcasting. You know, you could talk, like, my most viewed videos are on MagSafe battery packs, which does not seem like hugely popular, you know, that would be the thing, but it's the most views. You know, I think my most viewed video is like 800,000 views, and it's about MagSafe battery packs. It's like, whatever your niche is, if you're passionate about it, if you're knowledgeable about it, if you present it in an engaging way, and you offer value to your viewer or listener, people will follow and look at what you do after that too.
Yeah. How do you stay on top of all the tech trends, right? Because tech is changing every day. Are you just consistently just on websites, YouTube, everywhere trying to research? I'm
on social media all the time. You know, I'm on Threads and Twitter. Just it's all open on my Mac, you know, and I'll just scroll it. But I'm still RSS guy. Like I use Reader, the app on my Mac and my iPhone. I have a bunch of RSS feeds from like Tech Meme and The Verge, 9 to 5 Mac. And I have all those RSS feeds in there. And when I'm preparing to record Primary Tech, What I'll do is on a Wednesday, so later today, I'll scroll through all the feeds, see what the top stories were, read the article, put them in a Notion document that I share with Jason, my co-host, and then go from there. And so RSS feeds, I still think is a great way to stay up to date.
What are some of the strategies that you've seen have been effective to grow in your audience? Because I see you're doing a sort of like podcast, you have a whole community behind it. Like you're trying new things. I see you experimenting with a lot of the things that you're doing.
Experimenting is a key thing. The one who experiments the most is going to win. You can't be afraid of something failing or whatever. Like, I started the community, which for the podcast, Primary Tech, podcasting is a tough medium to have, who is listening, who is watching, how can I engage with them? Social media is one place, but, there's no centralized place for the conversation around an episode. And so I was like, I don't see many podcasts doing this. Let me try it. And so I use circle.so as the service, which is an online community, usually for like courses and memberships where people pay. But you can also have a community that's just free to join, and you can have, different channels and everybody can comment and post. And I was like, well, let me try this. And, we have over 200 people in that community now, which is awesome. Like that's a win. And now that's one of the things where it does cost. So that costs me $100 a month to keep that community open. We are making, a little bit more than that in like direct memberships because we don't have a lot of sponsors just yet. And so that's a choice that I'm making to say, this is worth paying for because these are the most invested people in the podcast. Like this is 200 people who created an account, joined a service, engaging, commenting, posting. And that means those people, if I ever make a real ask, like here's a sponsor that means a lot, can you go support them? Those are the people I know are most likely to actually take action because they care about the show. They're connected to Jason and I. And so it's been a great advantage. And so experimentation, try to connect with your audience in as many ways as possible.
The community you're building is really cool. I was checking it out and I was like, oh, wow, he's like trying some new stuff, building an actual community outside the pod. I thought that was really cool. So congrats on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
One of the things that I struggle with too is monetization, right? I think when you're first starting out, I feel like I've got momentum with my podcast. I've got momentum social media, but I reach out to these brands and it just doesn't go anywhere. I just get ghosted. Have you like found any techniques or anything that you can do to like get in contact with the actual person at the brand?
Yeah, it's tough for sure. And like, that's why you don't see a lot of sponsors in Primary Tech right now because we also don't have the numbers. When it comes to a podcast, sponsors really want 10,000 downloads per episode before they consider sponsoring. And many podcasts, including ours, is not there. We're not getting that many downloads. So you have to think, well, what is an advantage that a sponsor will have that you can sell? And so for us and for me, one of the ways is developing relationships over time. And so I'm a Apple Mac nerd, and I use apps like Audio Hijack to record audio. I use apps like Fantastical. And then I make content about them because I love those apps so much. So I have videos on my YouTube channel about Fantastical and Audio Hijack and all these things. And so kind of building those connections, even if you're not directly connected yet, but you are, giving these apps and brands exposure. And then when we launched Primary Tech, I reached out personally. I went on the website, used the contact form, found an email address, reached out and said, hey, we're launching a podcast. I don't know how many listeners it's going to get. I don't know what benefit it will be to you, but I love your app. I use it all the time. And we're going to, make sure that people see it, people hear about it. And so we got in a sponsor for that first month because of that kind of pre-work of saying, I value this product, this service, this brand personally. I'm going to do work. I'm going to make video content that would benefit them, whether they sponsor us or not. And then I'm going to make the ask to say, now will you sponsor and take a chance on us? And then because know your audience, like what are they going to be super interested in? Because then those brands, you could say, my audience is hyper-focused on this, and I think your brand meets that so closely that they're going to respond. And so you can try to sell whatever you have available to you, whether it's audience niche, whether it's past content about the brand. And if you're doing video, you could say, this is not just an audio ad. This is also going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on video. I can show your product. And those are some of the other selling points you could have.
Yeah, those are great tips because it's also much more organic, right? It's not like the typical, like, hey, use this product. Like you can actually say, hey, I use it. This is how I use it. I'm a big fan of this product. So I guess I just have to keep my head down and just keep reaching out to these brands because I'm reaching out to these brands that I enjoy and I really like would sort of like vouch for them. And I just haven't heard anything back. So
it's
I just have
tough.
to keep going.
A lot of people say you have to send like 100 emails before you get a response, like 100 different brands, basically, before you get one to reach back. Well, that's a lot of work. But if you want to do it, push for that and then offer like an amazing deal. Like I'm going to give you a month-long sponsorship across 4 to 5 episodes for something cheap, a few $100. Yeah. Because A, it's a few $100 you wouldn't have otherwise. B, that's cheaper than any other marketing they're going to be doing already. And it'll give you a chance to really sell it and prove that your audience will take action on what you tell them and your selling of that product, brand, service, or whatever. So, yeah, try it.
One of the things that I always ask my guests, if I pull up your playlist, who am I going to find on your playlist? So I'm going to put you on the spot. What kind of stuff are you listening to?
Again, honestly, whenever I have time to listen to something, I'm listening to a podcast. And so,
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Being a music guy, I was expecting like this like huge playlist.
Well, I am a music guy, but I'm like a classical music guy. So if you pull up my most played in Apple Music, it'll be Mozart's Requiem, the Lacrimosa movement especially. It's going to be Brahms' Third Symphony, third movement especially. You might see The Planets by Holst. You'll see some Mahler symphonies. Like that's actually the kind of stuff you're going to see on my most played.
Awesome. Even if you're like at the gym or whatever, like I feel like my playlist changes depending on what I've got going on, right? Like if I'm trying to pump myself up for like a meeting or the gym or something, like I have to have some metal or some hip hop. Like if I was trying to do that to classical, I don't know if it would work out for me.
The closest I get to that is like a Hans Zimmer soundtrack. Like if I want to put myself up, I put like the Dune soundtrack on or like Interstellar, something like that. That's actually my pump up music.
Nice. Awesome. So how do you handle sort of, blocks? Sometimes you have to be creative. You have new content. You like, hey, the new phone came out, but you just can't sort of like find like an idea. How do you handle that?
Don't make something just to make it is the first thing. There have been times where I feel like in a rut or I don't have a great idea. And it's like, if I make this video, it's not going to perform well. It's going to hurt chances of anyone seeing this video, watching the next video. So it is better to just wait a minute. Like it's okay. Don't make something. And then I also have a document in one of my Notion pages where it's just ideas. And I have a lot of ideas in there that I think are good that I don't have time or don't want to prioritize right now. And so I can always go back to that pool of ideas. And that's one of the things why I like diversifying my channel, because I know I have an entire segment of my audience that is into shortcuts. And I've asked for requests. And so I have hundreds of comments of people asking for shortcuts. And so that is a thing that I can always go back to with little effort as far as creativity, because I'm like, I'm just going to make the shortcuts that these people want. Speaks to them as the audience, offers something valuable to the viewer, and it's something I don't have to think too hard about. And so having that one or two things you can always go back to as just that doesn't take a lot of creative energy, but is still very valuable. It's good to have those. And then when it comes to the iPhone, I've been thinking about that for months. Like, okay, the iPhone's going to come out. What kind of unique angle can I have? What can I do for that? And so I have some ideas for that too. And as soon as that arrives, we'll start making the content.
Yeah, also providing value. I think one of the things that I saw, you're like, hey, this is the shortcut that I use when there's a new episode of my podcast. And then it publishes like the Apple link, the YouTube link, Spotify, everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think that providing value on social media, I think that's huge, right? Did you find sort of success doing that?
Yeah, and that's the value I talk about a lot in the Riverside videos is like educate, inspire, entertain. And if you could do a combination of those, even better. My primary is to educate. Sometimes I try to throw a little entertain in there with a joke or two, or just letting personality shine through. But, if someone's forte is inspirational stories, that's great. But figure out what of those three, what combination of those three, educate, inspire, entertain, you fit, and then do that, provide the value. And you see, even on social media, like posting on Threads or Twitter, my most viewed tweet was actually a little video clip where I showed people how you can select multiple items in a list on iPhone with a 2-finger swipe. Okay. Swipe down with 2 fingers and you can select multiple items in a list. Little video clip, million views. And if you think about it, why? Why did it do that? Well, it's something people didn't readily know about. It was new information. But B, it was really valuable because it's something that's going to save them time. And that's a lot of what I see people do in podcasts and videos. They talk about themselves or they talk about their process, which is okay. But if someone's tuning in, it's just our nature. We're in it for ourselves. What are we going to get out of it? What am I going to learn? Or will I be entertained? Will I laugh? And so when you think about the person on the other side of that post, the other side of that video, that podcast, what value are they going to feel they got out of it when they're done watching, when they're done listening? And if you could provide value throughout, which is the YouTube retention game, every second that they're watching, they're learning something, they're being entertained, there's some value for the viewer, that's the key to really finding the success.
Where do you see sort of the tech trend to be going in the future for content creators, for podcasters? Where do you think we're headed in the future?
You know, you talked about AI earlier and how that might change in the future. Even now, you know, there's lots of AI-generated content on the web, a lot of websites just kind of creating garbage articles just for SEO, which search is also changing because of that. Yeah. I do think that when it comes to the future, I remember this TED Talk I saw a while ago that the economy of the internet is trust. That's actually the most valuable thing. And when you think about, 5-10 years from now, when it's going to be even harder to distinguish AI content versus what someone has written or said, I actually think people are going to begin gravitating even more towards that content creator-based ecosystem because there can be trust there. You know, I have enough videos out there talking about smart home stuff or whatever that if someone wants to know if this is valuable for them, is this a good thing, that hopefully they will trust when I say, well, yes, it is, or no, it's not. And they know I'm not AI generated. You know, I'm flesh and blood. I'm talking to the camera. And I think that is going to be a valuable asset for anyone where a person will trust the creator, trust the person. And if you can extrapolate that out to the brand, like with Riverside, to trust the brand, that's going to be a huge deal. And I think it's going to be even more important as we see more AI content just spread around.
Do you struggle with unplugging, right? Because everything that you're doing is related to tech, right? So I don't know if you sort of have to like take a weekend off and you're like, I'm headed to the woods. I don't want anything to do with tech. But I sometimes struggle with that just because tech is used everywhere at work, you know, content creation, whatever. I don't know if you struggle with that.
So my last job and career that was for like 10 years, I was working a lot of the weekend and I had like weird days off. And so for me, I knew when I switched careers, I did not want to work on the weekends. I knew that needed to be a hard boundary. And when it comes to content creation, that's putting a disadvantage on myself. Like a lot of guys hustle 7 days a week and they'll make content and videos all the time. But I said for myself, like once it hits Friday night, I'm going to turn off. Like I'm not going to step in this studio any part of the weekend to do any kind of content creation or any kind of work. And I've kept that up for the last 2.5 years. And so that is my barrier. Like my weekends are no work, you know, not doing it. And it does help me not get burnt out as much. You know, most weeks when I get to the end of Friday, I'm like, it's been a long week. Made a lot of things and I'm done. But having those 2 days of total rest, I'm able to come back on Monday and start again. And so I do think having those boundaries is really important. And a lot of times on the weekend, I'll try to read a paper book. You know, I don't do a lot of ebooks because it's on a device and I'll probably get distracted. And so I buy paper books and I go out on the patio and I'll spend a few hours reading every weekend. And that helps me a lot.
In the future, you know, content creators, they can do it from anywhere, right? So do you think in the future, AR, VR is going to be a thing for like podcasting? Do you see that?
I'm still very skeptical. I got an Apple Vision Pro right over here, and I use it.
Do you use it, though? Everybody I know that has it, they're like, I've got it, but...
Jason uses it every day. He's in there reading articles every day. I'm not sure how he does it.
Okay.
You know, I use it once a week, if that, to maybe watch something. We're a long way from that. You know, I think the tech has to be as light as a pair of glasses and as powerful as something like the Apple Vision Pro, and that's technology. I think 10 years probably before we even see that become anything. But one day, you know, one of the most compelling things about the Apple Vision Pro is immersive content. And so if you've ever experienced it, and I encourage anyone, you can go to an Apple store for free and just do a demo. there's an Alicia Keys rehearsal room demo where you put on the Apple Vision Pro and you see like this room where Alicia Keys, her band and singers are rehearsing. And it is uncanny how much you feel like you are there experiencing it. And you turn your head and you see
incredible.
One day, maybe there will be an opportunity for podcasters and content creators to make content where it feels like a viewer can experience it like they're in the room. And I think that would be a compelling aspect. You know, if we can record something where it feels like me and Jason are talking and the viewer's sitting on the chair right next to us, I think that would be a really cool experience. And so I don't know how long out that is, but I'm here for it. I'll try it. I'll experiment when it comes.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's been your favorite piece of tech that you've tried recently? For me, it's been the Ray-Ban Metas. A lot of people aren't familiar with those, but those have been really cool just for like headphones, for content creation, for all kinds of things. And they're great sunshades, right, as well.
Man, that's really good. I've wanted to try that. That's the one piece of tech I really haven't gotten recently.
Oh, yeah?
I've gotten all these dumb AI gadgets. I got the Rabbit R1. I got the Humane AI pin. Both of those collecting dust right now. But yeah, favorite piece. I mean, I don't know if this is not a cop-out, but honestly, my M4 iPad Pro is probably one of my favorite pieces of tech right now, just because I love editing podcasts on the iPad. I edit the audio version in Ferrite on my iPad with Apple Pencil, and the M4 iPad Pro is just a great machine. I went back down to the 11-inch. It's the perfect size. It's light. It's portable. When I take it out of the Magic Keyboard case, and I can also do a lot of work on it when I'm using the Magic Keyboard case. I go out on the patio, and that's where I'll do a lot of admin work on my iPad. And I still love just using iPad OS. I feel less distracted. I feel less, because it honestly just does less than my Mac. I feel more the ability to focus. And so, yeah, I really like my iPad.
I like that. So for video creating, do you use the pencil? Do you feel more creative that way or what?
No. It's Final Cut on the Mac is still where I'm the fastest and where I will stick. And there's so many more tools like Gling that I mentioned where it just works on the Mac, and that's where I use it. So audio in Ferrite on the iPad, love it. We'll always do it there. But video wise, I'm in Final Cut on the Mac.
Yeah, I have to ask you about the mic. It's been bugging me the entire episode. Everybody goes with the Shure, right? So tell me about the mic and why did you decide to go with that mic and not the Shure?
I got the Shure right here.
Oh, you've got the Shure.
I got the Shure. This is the Earthworks Ethos, and it's my favorite mic, and I think it sounds really good. It is so much less finicky than the Shure SM7B, and I did a whole video on the Riverside channel comparing this mic to the Shure SM7B. The SM7, you need a preamp, you need a cloud lifter, or you need an expensive audio interface like the Rodecaster Duo or the Pro 2. It could sound good. I do think it takes more work to sound good because a lot of times people's voices can sound dull. It is a little low end focused, and so you really have to work on that EQ. This one right out of the box I think sounds more natural. It's a little brighter. It is actually a condenser mic, small diaphragm condenser, which I think gets a little better quality. And this mic specifically is good at rejecting room noise and other noise outside my studio because my whole family's here too. And so I think this mic, it looks cool on camera. You can get it in black or you can get it in this like brushed aluminum finish. Sounds good. And you can run this with any audio interface. Like you do not need anything special. You can plug it into a Scarlett 2i2 or a Solo. Works great that way. And yeah, I love everything about it. So yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Before we sign off today, I want to give you the stage for you to plug in. Where can people find your podcast, your social media, everything? The stage is yours.
For sure. Go subscribe to my YouTube channel if you can, youtube.com/@BeardFM. I'm trying to get to 100K this month, so I'd love your help getting there. And definitely listen to Primary Technology. It's a weekly tech show. Me and Jason A10 comes out every Thursday. You can go to primarytech.fm or just search Primary Technology in whatever podcast app and you'll find us.
I think we could geek out about anything. We could just go down the rabbit hole of like cameras or microphones, content creation. We could be here forever, but I know that you're a busy guy. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, super talented Steven Robles on the Maverick Podcast. In dreams, we trust.